Alright, Denia's official kit is finally out, and I genuinely think this might be one of the strongest support DPS characters released so far. She's not just another off-field unit, she's a grouper, she's a burst amplifier, she buffs entire archetypes, she deals serious personal damage, and honestly her outro skill alone looks borderline broken. But what actually makes her strong? How does her gameplay work? What teams does she fit into? And most importantly, is she actually worth pulling on your account? Because depending on whether you play Luke, Lene, or Ameth, the answer changes a lot. So in this video, we're going to break down her entire gameplay loop, how her two forms work, why her liberation mechanics are so important, her best weapons and echo setups, her strongest teams, and finally whether Denia is actually worth your pulls. So let's start with the basics. Denia is primarily designed as a fusion burst and tune strain support character, but unlike many dedicated supports in the game, she also contributes a very significant amount of personal damage. And that's important because she isn't just buffing your team from the sidelines. A huge part of her value comes from the fact that she actively contributes meaningful off-field DPS while simultaneously amplifying the entire team's damage output. Now, the core of her kit revolves around switching between two different states: her normal form and her enhanced form. And this transformation is tied directly to her liberation. In her normal state, Denia builds up a resource called Void Particles. You generate these by using her skill and basic attacks. Once you've built enough to set up, you activate her first liberation, which transforms her into her enhanced state. And this is where the character really comes online. Inside this enhanced form, she gains offensive buffs, increased attack, stronger damage output, and access to her most important mechanics. This enhanced state lasts for 12 seconds, and during that time, Denia builds another resource called Conformal Charge through her normal attacks. Once you reach 100 Conformal Charge, you gain access to her second liberation, and this second liberation is honestly the centerpiece of her entire kit. When Denia uses her second liberation, she consumes all of her Conformal Charges built during Enhanced State and the Void Particles accumulated earlier. Then she creates something called the Erosion Field, and this thing does so much at once. First, it pulls enemies together for 4 seconds. That alone already gives her incredible utility because grouping is insanely valuable in WEWA, especially for fast-paced rotations and AoE burst windows. But the field also continuously deals fusion damage that counts as liberation damage. That distinction matters a lot because so much of Denia's scaling and team synergy revolves specifically around liberation amplification. So this isn't just a flashy finisher, it's crowd control, off-field damage, sustained pressure, and team synergy all wrapped into one mechanic. And because the field continues dealing damage after Denia leaves the field, she naturally slots into quick swap rotations extremely well. Now, the really interesting part is that her second liberation can actually scale even harder through another mechanic called Dark Core. You gain Dark Core in two ways: by staying inside Enhanced State for the full duration and by triggering her intro skill, which means your intro timing is incredibly important for maximizing her damage. That's a very important detail because players who skip her intro setup are literally losing a meaningful chunk of her potential output. So what does an actual Denia rotation look like? Thankfully, her gameplay loop is surprisingly clean. You start with her intro skill, then her regular skill, then enter Enhanced State using Liberation 1. After entering Enhanced form, your goal becomes building Conformal Charge as quickly as possible through her normal attacks. Once your Forte gauge is full and you hit maximum Conformal Charge, you activate Liberation 2. That creates the Erosion Field, applies all the off-field pressure, groups enemies together, and sets up your next teammate for massive damage amplification. And honestly, this is one of the reasons Denia looks so smooth to play. Her rotation has setup, payoff, visual impact, and continuous field presence. Nothing about the kit feels disconnected. Everything naturally flows into the next mechanic. Now let's talk about the real reason Denia might shake the meta. Her team buffs are absolutely ridiculous. Starting with Fusion Burst mode, the entire team gains a 30% fusion damage bonus simply from her entering this state. That alone would already make her valuable for fusion-centric teams. But then we get into her Tune Strain support effects. All Resonators gain Tune Break boost, and if a teammate exceeds 100% off-tune buildup rate, Denia converts the excess into even more Tune Break boost scaling. So she isn't just a generic support, she directly scales with Tune Strain mechanics in a way that makes specialized teams significantly stronger. But the truly insane part of her kit is her outro skill. In Fusion Burst mode, fusion burst damage against nearby enemies is amplified by 60% for 30 seconds. 30 seconds! That duration is absurd. That level of amplification is absurd. And because of how long it lasts, it creates incredibly flexible rotations where your main DPS can fully capitalize on the buff window. Then, in Tune Strain mode, the incoming Resonator gains 15% all damage amplification, which can become 40% after triggering Tune Strain shifting. So regardless of whether you're playing Fusion Burst teams or Tune Strain teams, Denia massively amplifies your carry either way. That's why she's described as a premium support, a support DPS, a grouper, and a archetype defining buffer all at once. Now, if you want to build Denia properly, the biggest thing to understand is this. Most of her damage count as liberation damage. That means your build priority should heavily revolve around maximizing liberation scaling while maintaining enough energy recharge for smooth rotations. Her best in slot weapon is obviously her signature, Forged Dwarf Star. This weapon gives crit rate, attack scaling, and massive liberation damage bonuses. And because Denia consistently applies Fusion Burst and Tune Strain effects, she maintained the weapon passive very consistently. If you don't have her signature weapon, don't worry because she actually has several strong alternatives. Stringmaster is probably your strongest non-signature weapon. Then you have Lethean Elegy, Cosmic Ripples for free-to-play players, that is very accessible, and Augment from the Battle Pass is your next best option. For Echo sets, Denia basically has two archetypes. For Tune Strain teams, you run the new Tune Break Focus set for Denia. For Fusion Burst teams, you run Chromatic Foam. Stat priorities are pretty standard: crit rate on 4 cost, fusion damage on 3 cost, and attack on 1 cost. You'll also want around 125% energy recharge because her entire gameplay loop depends on getting liberation consistently. As for talent priority, focus on liberation first, that's your highest value upgrade by far. Then prioritize Forte, normal attack, skill, and finally intro. Now let's talk about where Denia really starts looking scary, her team compositions. She basically has two primary archetypes, Tune Strain teams and Fusion Burst teams. For Tune Strain teams, her best partner right now appears to be Luke. The current strongest setup is Luke, Denia, and Mornay. And according to early calculations, this team already outperforms Luke Lene variations. That's a huge deal because it potentially redefines Luke's best premium team entirely. If you need a more accessible sustain option, you can swap Mornay for Shorekeeper. Now, on the Fusion Burst side, the strongest setup currently looks like Ameth, Denia, and Lupa. And honestly, this team looks incredibly scary. Some early impressions are even suggesting it competes with or possibly exceeds existing premium Tune Rupture setups. The downside is that this team lacks sustain. So if survivability becomes an issue, you may need adjustments depending on future content difficulty. You can also replace Lupa with Chisa. Both versions are very close in performance, but they offer different strengths. Lupa provides fusion resistance shred, additional fusion damage bonus, and better quick swap synergy. Meanwhile, Chisa provides defense ignore and additional fusion burst stack generation. At equal investment levels, Lupa appears to perform slightly better overall. And one more important thing, Denia herself can actually function as a semi-DPS unit. That means you can experiment with teams where she spends significantly more field time instead of acting purely as a support. So now comes the big question, is Denia actually worth pulling? And honestly, this depends heavily on your account. If you're a Luke player or Luke enjoyer, her value looks extremely high. She appears significantly stronger for Luke compared to Lene, which immediately makes her one of the most impactful upgrades available for that archetype. If you play Fusion Burst teams with Ameth, she also looks incredibly valuable as well. However, if you already own fully optimized Lene and Mornay setups on your existing teams, Denia becomes a smaller upgrade. She's still extremely strong, she's still likely top tier, but she may not dramatically transform your account the same way she would for players missing those premium supports. So overall, Denia looks like one of the strongest sub-support DPS characters released so far. She brings grouping, off-field damage, archetype amplification, massive outro buffs, flexible team building, and surprisingly strong personal DPS. And honestly, if the current numbers stay intact, there's a very real chance Denia becomes a staple support for multiple future Fusion archetypes moving forward. And that's everything we know about Denia so far. Let me know down below, are you planning to pull her? Do you think she's stronger than Lene? And what teams are you planning to run her with? If this video helped you out, make sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Peace.